Simple tasks are no longer simple. Resolutions are trickier as problems have become layered. There is also a level of emotional burden that is cumulative. People are really struggling right now, everyone from housekeepers to administration. Personally, I find myself riding a constant wave of extreme enthusiasm, and then I crash into a deep sense of hopelessness and isolation. For me, the balancing point is constantly moving. And I have heard from many of you that you are having the same or similar experiences. So, in the spirit of finding the balancing point for our work on the forum, I wanted to reiterate our mission. The forum's mission is to address constructively the concerns of UNC-Chapel Hill employees by doing the following: seeking out the issues, interests, ideas, and participation of employees, developing proactive, progressive recommendations and advocating these to the administration and the represented employees, providing an effective two-way communication link between the administration and the employees, fostering an open and positive environment throughout the university community, and supporting achievement of the university's mission of teaching, research, and public service. Notice the verbs in our mission: seek, develop, provide, foster, communicate, and support. Our mission is advocacy in action. So even when I feel like retreating and giving up, I find ways, or I try to find ways, to re-engage. I am not perfect at this. Some days I just suck, but some days I don't. And again, I'm hearing from many of you that you are feeling the same way. Last week, I was afforded the opportunity to share updates to the Board of Trustees. I outlined all the amazing ways in which this body worked towards our mission in 2020 during a raging pandemic. I also shared the hope that we would continue this work while practicing care and concern for one another as we are all struggling to find our balancing point. I mentioned that as vaccines become available, we will begin moving more people back to classrooms, offices, and communal spaces. Staff will be asked to manage another major shift, both mentally and physically, even as some of us have lost loved ones to this horrible pandemic. Even as recent incidents of racism, anti-Semitism, and misogyny, such as the one that attacked our campus Y, have attempted to fill our hearts with fear and hate. But as Martin Luther King taught us, we will fight darkness with light. There is much work to do, and we cannot be sidetracked by hate in any form. Our first order of business on the agenda is our roundtable with the Chancellor and the Provost. Through this partnership, we are providing an effective two-way communication link between administration and employees. Later in the agenda, we will be working on a resolution which we believe will advocate the development of proactive, progressive recommendations to the administration. In fact, our agenda items are full of advocacy in action. To the body, I say a million thank yous. To all UNC staff, I give my deep gratitude for your efforts and flexibility. And to the administration, I am deeply honored to partner with you. And with that, I will turn it over to Chancellor Guskiewicz and Provost Blouin.
Thank you, Shana. It's great to be back with you. Some perhaps maybe in the theater. I love the theater talk as we were gathering here a little while ago. And I want to thank you for your leadership, Shane. I loved your comments at the Board of Trustees meeting last week, and certainly today's as well. But I'm going to keep my remarks relatively short and turn it over to Bob, and then we'll open it up. But I do want to say a few things here, and I want to just start by acknowledging and that some of you may have seen the news about the recent military coup in Burma, and I know that we have a large Burmese population among our employees here at Carolina, and also living in the surrounding Chapel Hill area. And so we know that many of these families migrated here to escape the oppression, and this news this week is difficult to hear. So we're thinking of them and during this difficult time. And I know Becky joins me in providing support in any way that we can for these families who are important to our campus community. On Monday, I had the opportunity to accept an award on behalf of the university for the Carolina Blood Drive. We were recognized by the Red Cross as among the premier one-day drives in the country last year during a very challenging time, obviously. At the November 19th winter drive, there were 277 productive pints and 1,085 combined units from 258 donors. 62 of these were first-time donors. This wouldn't be possible without the employee forum. The forum delegate, Jen DeNeal, is this year's chair of the blood drive and organizing committee. And I want to thank Jen and other forum members for supporting this important effort for our campus and surrounding community. I know that you're interested in continuing to hear about the budget and the spring plans, and I just want to provide a brief update regarding the budget. We're making good progress. Nate Knuffman and his team, as well as Becky Mangini and her team, are working tirelessly with units on campus. At the beginning of the pandemic, we said that every revenue source was threatened by the pandemic, and like all universities across the country, we have to. We're cognizant of this. We're trying to do everything to protect our mission and our people, but we needed to put some measures in place. This cut in personnel and operating funds is necessary to help address a structural deficit that we've had at Carolina now, as you've heard us say, for nearly a decade now. And some have asked why we're doing this now in the midst of a pandemic. We don't, I would just say that we don't know what the future holds yet, and we must ensure our financial stability given this uncertainty. And I talked a bit about that to the employee forum the last time we were together, but I believe it's the responsible thing to do, but we're working through this in a collaborative way. I've been impressed with the way the deans and other unit leaders are engaging in engaging their constituencies on these difficult decisions, just as we have done the same in consulting with deans and vice chancellors throughout this process. It's not going to be easy, but I do feel confident that we're going to get through this together. There is some good news, and I mentioned this just yesterday in our cabinet meeting, that there are three areas that other ways in which resources come into the university. Our enrollment continues to remain strong and steady, unlike many universities across the country. Research funding is staying consistently strong, and the campaign for Carolina remains on a strong trajectory with another end of year record-setting December and start to the new year in January. So those are positives that will help to offset some of what we're challenged by. On spring planning, in-person classes for undergrads will begin on Monday. We're in the middle of week 3 right now of the semester, but we'll begin those in-person classes for undergrads. It's a relatively small number, about 20% of the classes. We'll start Monday, and I'm confident about where we're headed. We know that there's no one solution to prevent the virus from spreading, so we're using a layered approach to manage it from every way possible. Provost Blouin and I got an update yesterday morning from some of our experts that have been working with us, with the Carolina Together testing program, and we've learned that there's no indication that there's been any transmission in our campus facilities beyond about 46 students who are living in our residence halls. That we believe that was probably the location of where they were infected, but other campus facilities appear to be, things are working well. And I just we're grateful for the Carolina Together testing program. It continues to help mitigate the spread of the virus. As of February 1st, there were 359 positive cases of students and 1,260 close contacts that are being closely monitored. And I think a really important number is 168 positive cases that were identified in our prior to arrival testing, that these are individuals who ended up not coming to campus. They stayed home and isolated and then came when it was safe to do so. So, we're now able to catch these cases and clusters early thanks to the testing program. And we've acknowledged for quite a while that we had to expect that there would be some cases, but I do feel, on campus, but I do feel that we're doing a really good job of managing them, and just very impressed with the tremendous work that our students and staff, have really put forth to help mitigate the spread. Our Carolina COVID-19 Student Services Corps, led by Meg Zamarodi, professor in the School of Nursing, they've now logged over 5,000 hours and a volunteer service to help at the 3 testing sites and over at the analysis lab for Carolina Together testing program. So I think it just speaks as to how we come together as a community here at Carolina to solve these problems in a collaborative way. And so I'll just sort of wrap up by saying that, with the vaccine, we are continuing to advocate for our frontline essential staff, to receive the vaccine in phase 3. The good news is that even though the prioritization schedule has changed a bit over the past 3 or 4 weeks, it does look as if these staff will be part of phase 3. And I'm happy that Campus Health has been approved to be a vaccination distribution center once we've moved into that phase. UNC Health, as you know, has been a distribution site at the hospital and at the Friday Center for several weeks now, and that appears to be going well. And I'm just grateful for all the work that so many people, including several of you on the call today, have helped in preparing us for a safe and successful semester. But I do hear everything that Shana mentioned early on, and that is that people are struggling. So again, I just continue to see the impact of our staff, and I just want to remind everyone that we have to acknowledge the great work of our staff, and I want to remind everybody to please submit recommendations for the 2021 Massey Award. These awards honor employees each year for unusual, meritorious, or superior contributions to our campus community, and we've seen during this pandemic that there's no shortage of those actions from our staff, and our staff deserve all the recognition that we can give them. So I'm going to stop there and pass it all over to Bob.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Shana. It's really a pleasure to be with you again today. I'd like to maybe just start off with a few additional comments on the testing program, some of the things that the Chancellor mentioned. As of yesterday, we have run approaching 35,000 tests since we began in the 3rd week of January. And I just want to thank all of the faculty, staff, and students for their enthusiastic participation in the testing program. I think we all know that this is a really important piece of infrastructure for the university to have in place in order to keep the entire campus safe. And so thank you for your support. Thank you for your advocacy for it on behalf of the staff. And thank you for showing up and getting tested on behalf of everybody. So that I think has really made a big difference. And I also want to thank you for your advocacy for the staff, particularly in the area of vaccination. It is important, that our frontline staff be in that group 3 category with other important healthcare workers. And so the fact that we have made progress in getting the North Carolina Health and Human Services Department to support that, not only for this university, but for all of the universities in the state, I think is very, very important. And also recognizing that our faculty who will come here and have face-to-face contact with our students would also be in that testing category. So thank you for your strong advocacy and push. And I just want to publicly thank Kevin for the work that he did at the state level in order to get this accomplished on behalf of all of the universities in the state. I was just going to take a minute, to remind all of you that there are other things that we work on besides COVID-19. And I just want to direct you to the carolinanext.unc.edu website to take a look at the university strategic plan. We've had to make some adjustments in the strategic plan. We actually crossed the 1-year anniversary of the plan, that being the date in which the Board of Trustees endorsed the strategic plan back a year ago, January. The reason why we've had to make a number of adjustments is because we're living in a very different world. And so, you know, what has changed? Well, COVID certainly has changed a lot of our abilities to do what we originally wanted to do. The whole Black Lives Matter movement and the tension within our country, across our state, and even across our campus as it relates to race relations has changed. And of course, the financial and economic impact of all of this on our university has changed. So I just wanted to bring the strategic plan back in front of you because, and I did have the pleasure, Shana, I think it was maybe one of the times that you were not present, but I think I had the opportunity to present to the staff forum the strategic plan, perhaps a little over a year ago in terms of what we were planning to present to the trustees. And so I just redirect you back to the plan because a lot of changes have been made. We have tried to COVIDize it and also incorporate much of the learnings that we have been gathering as a result of some new discussions that we have had with our Black faculty, staff, and students, and modernized, I guess, our environmental scans, many of our strategic objectives, and strategic opportunities. And so, so a lot of changes in the plan since then. Certainly, one of the areas that I'm most proud of is Build Our Community Together, Strategic Initiative 1. And Amy Hertel and Sibby Anderson-Tompkins has done just a fantastic job in advancing that particular initiative. Also in the discovery area, a couple of new projects that I think you should be aware of. One is called READY. It's called, and that acronym stands for Rapidly Emerging Antiviral Drug Development Initiative. This is a very unique partnership between the School of Medicine, the School of Public Health, and the School of Pharmacy, as well as the Eshelman Institute for Innovation. And it's a partnership that also will go well beyond the boundaries of this university with federal and state funding agencies, as well as partnerships with other universities. And the goal here is to prepare not only this university or this state, but the world for the next pandemic. As we start to think about all of the potential treatment modalities that are going to be necessary to position ourselves to perhaps to have a much better ability to respond to the next pandemic. And so I just want to give you a heads up that this exciting work is really made possible because of the incredible faculty and staff and student body population at this university within these areas of science. And so they're all working very, very hard in order to accomplish this. The other big area that we've been contemplating for now several years is, you know, what should this university look like in a data-driven society world? And for that reason, we have been very reflective of what should data science look like. And one of the things that perhaps could just make it real to all of us is how social networks and social activities, you know, are now being affected by data science, and how these big companies like Facebook and Twitter are using information many times for good, but as I think we all have learned over the last several months, that sometimes this data can be used in nefarious ways. And it sometimes converges with our own self-interest, you know, in our society as it relates to being a democracy. And so so we are looking at that and looking at building a new program, an infrastructure that will support not only being a world-class university in the science of data science, but being able to apply data science in a humanistic way such that we can begin to appreciate the implications of data science on society. So just be aware that this is something that, that we're working on. And of course, we have to do all of this, all of the work within the strategic plan with an eye towards some of the things that the Chancellor has already talked about, and that is limited resources. And so many of these initiatives are going to have to be revenue generating and opportunity generating initiatives in order for them to be self-sustaining. So I know that we want to save time for questions, and I want to stop there. Shana?
Sure. So I'm getting direct messaged, and one of them was, can you specifically talk about what's changed in the Carolina Together, building our community together aspect of the strategic plan?
Well, I think the first thing is Civi has, I think, totally rethought the DE&I office and built out the DE&I Council, which is a group, a pan-campus community group that is going to help inform not only her, but I think the entire campus as it relates to various issues that the campus is facing, and also solutions as it relates to those issues. So I would say that that's one thing that has really occurred over the last several months.
I have had some feedback on that, if you would like me to share that with you.
Sure.
Love the fact that the council has been created, but I've gotten feedback that it appears to be top heavy with folks in administration and not well represented from folks who are boots on the ground, kind of frontline folks. Are there plans to be more inclusive on the council?
Yeah, I think that the council's original structure was to capitalize on existing structures within the schools and the units. So for example, most of the schools have an office of diversity, inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or something that is similar to that in function. And so most of those have either a director or an associate dean that sort of represents that school. So the initial, I think, intent, in terms of organizational structure was to bring those people together. The actual work that will ultimately come out of the council will be work that will be made up of multiple teams, subcomponents of that, which I think would be populated by faculty and staff from all across the university at all different levels. And so this is relatively new. I think that group is still trying to, get themselves organized and get subcommittees in place. But I'm very optimistic that that will be the mainstay of that particular organization.
Great, thank you. I'd like to open it up to the body. Are there questions? This is a round table, folks.
I have a question.
Sure.
I wanted to ask about the data science program, and you mentioned having a more humanistic sort of focus. So I just wanted to confirm, is that a collaborative effort between, some of faculty in the humanities and liberal arts fields along with the data scientists, or is that part of the plan?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, a lot of people may not realize this, but many of the departments that are in arts and humanities and the social sciences are actually recruiting data science type faculty into their spaces. And what we have found, even though we don't have, say, a singular entity that we call data science, we have an incredible amount of pan-campus strength in data science. And so what this initiative is trying to do is to build upon the horizontal strength of the campus, the pan-campus community, and to bring the talents of all of the departments, not just computer science and STORE and maybe SILS and some of the more what we might consider hardcore sciences. But also we think that Carolina has a unique opportunity that most other universities do not have, and that is bridging the data science all the way into society with a humanistic perspective. And if you just look at what's going on, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or what China is doing with data and manipulating data and using it perhaps in nefarious ways, there are societal implications to almost everything that is going on with regards to data and data science. And we think that we can do it better, mainly from the perspective of a humanistic point of view. And so this is not easy to do, but I think we already have a lot of the human capital in place. We could build upon that, but the challenge will be, can we create a institutional infrastructure that can create undergraduate programs, master's programs, PhD programs, research programs with this pan-campus philosophy. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish.
If I could just add one thing to that. We see this with our Institute for Convergent Science initiative as well, which is a really nice sort of a program that's running along with data science, and it will intersect in many ways. But one of the things we've done there, it's bringing together scholars from different backgrounds, perspectives, levels of expertise to solve big problems. And we've engaged a lot of our social science and humanities faculty and scholars in that initiative, because we need, if it's around new technology that's being developed or a new drug delivery system by the folks in pharmacy and in physics, we need the humanists and the social scientists to help us think about the way society is going to interface with these new technologies and devices. So I think we do that better than anybody at Carolina, and I see it every day, and I know many of you do as well. So that's how we're going to build both convergent science and data science out here at Carolina.
And we just recently hired within the School of Law a faculty member who actually turned out to make her decision to come here because we were building this pan-campus data science program. And one of her interests, as a part of her law interests, is in data science.
Great.
Hey, Bob, this is Matthew Teal. I know you had the working group previously on data science. Are you planning to use this sort of new approach or new philosophy to continue looking at using data science on campus to optimize operations, for example, tying that in with the strategic plan?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I think what you'll find is that a lot of the strategic initiatives overlap with one another. Certainly operational excellence, which I see Rick Ronowski called here, that's certainly data science is going to be an important tool down the road, particularly AI and other forms of information exchange that can accelerate our abilities to do work. I'm looking at even the strategic initiative Promote Democracy. How smart were we to have a strategic initiative called Promote Democracy? I mean, we I don't think ever really envisioned that democracy might actually be on the table in this country, and the importance of us as an institution to really dive deep into all aspects of things that affect our culture and our society. So yes, I certainly do, Matt, and I think that operational excellence will be ultimately enriched by better data infrastructure in order to help support all of your work.
Thank you.
This is Arlene Metter with a question. Do you think this will lead to more interdisciplinary studies for the students as well, with the whole cross connections?
Absolutely. One of the things that is our challenge and our strength is that we that data science is ubiquitous. Just about every school unit on this campus, has some claim, to data science. And so a lot of our academic programs already have data science incorporated into it. So as we start to think about, bringing a lot of the talents of our campus together in perhaps a more strategic, integrated fashion, we can create synergies that we otherwise would not have been able to recognize and to execute in a way that could be impactful for our students, as well as for our faculty and staff in the form of collaboration. So I'm very excited about how this could be an initiative, perhaps a new school that could be like no other on our campus.
Phil.
Yeah, I guess I have a question too about sort of the emergence of this. I know it's been a conversation for a long time around data science here at UNC, so it's not as though it is purely something that has come out during the pandemic, but I do wonder if in the planning for this and thinking about how this program or potentially a school is resourced or rolls out, does it seem, or do you think it's possible to have this program sort of reflect maybe a more resilient structure than we might have otherwise had? Were we just doing this in the before times as another school with another building with another bunch of faculty who have offices in a place? Like, is there, I mean, I wonder if this is an opportunity to re-envision, particularly with that center or that initiative, what the academic environment might look like for a program like that that's new.
Bill, you have captured the sentiment that was expressed in several of my last few meetings on data science. You're exactly right. In the post, I'm going to be optimistic, in a post-COVID-19 world, I think our approach towards education, service, and research is going to be changed forever. And the way we think about this university is going to be changed forever. And so, so Zooming, whether we like it or not, we really have accepted it as an effective way to do some aspects, not all, but some aspects of our work. And so I think we're thinking less about bricks and mortar, more about maximizing existing infrastructure and talent, and seeing how we can integrate that across common themes and interests. And that's kind of at the heart of the philosophy of this new initiative. So I'm hoping that it will be viewed as not only creating something really new and special, but doing it in an incredibly cost-effective way.
So there's a question that came to me in the chat, and it's sort of about how we are communicating with our students in terms of the 3 Ws. I think what came up in the media recently is this website that students are still gathering and sort of proudly displaying that they're gathering, which I think was concerning for a lot of people. Not just the fact that they're gathering, but that they're not shy to post about it. And so can you talk about some of the things that we're doing to try to address that and re-communicate with these folks that that's probably not a good idea?
Sure, I'll jump in and just say that I just had this conversation with my student advisory committee on Friday afternoon and brought this up, and I wanted to hear from them. This is a group of about 14 students, mostly undergraduates with 2 or 3 graduate students. And I said, I need to hear from you because the reputation of our university is being compromised in many ways by these activities. And we know that some of those videos that have been posted haven't even been authenticated. In other words, we're not even certain that they were in fact, pictures of gatherings or parties here near our campus or with our students. But some of them clearly we believe are. And so I asked the group about, well, how can we best message this out? They were overwhelmingly felt that as if occasional tweets reminding the students of, they follow Twitter more than they do email. So, we're always trying to find the best way to message. Campus messages are not always read. That we have to think about the frequency by which we send those out. But so right after that meeting on Friday, it was around 5:30 or so, 6 o'clock, I tweeted out a message to the campus about the importance of this coming into a weekend, just to remember the gathering rules. And So we have to just continue to communicate. Student Affairs, Division of Student Affairs, and I know some of you work within Student Affairs, have really worked tirelessly to try to help our students understand this, communicating the commitment that they made, reminding them of that commitment with the attestation of the COVID-19 community standards. We're doing a better job of working with our Greek system. And right now, the data that Bob and I got yesterday suggests that there are only 9 individuals living within Greek homes who have tested positive, and we're Campus Health is working closely with them and with Orange County Health Department to be sure we're continuing to message the importance of this, quarantining those houses if there is an infection positive case. So it's about education, continuing to message, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. If you have ideas about how you interact with students as well, if you think there are other ways we can be managing this and trying to mitigate these activities, prevent them.
Somebody shared in the chat with me that NCCU has a marketing campaign named Protect the Nest. And apparently it's working quite well on their campus. They interview students, they tweet out pictures of students wearing masks and explaining why it's important. The forum made a mask wearing video. Feel free to reshare that. And it's got some basketball coach in there.
The Protect the Nest campaign, was that at North Carolina Central, you said, Shana?
NCCU, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess I would just add, when I walk around campus, I see a lot of compliant students. And we want to make sure that we're giving our students credit when they deserve it, and then also disciplining students, if they are falling outside of our community standards. As the Chancellor mentioned, the videos that have been shared, we have really tried hard to get a date stamp and a authentic period, and location for those videos. What we have been able to do through the partnership between the campus and the town of Chapel Hill through the joint police force is in response to complaints, been able to address issues of parties in the Chapel Hill community. And that has been something that I think has really worked well. And we have promised the town as well as all of you that we would take those incidences seriously, and those names are passed on to the Dean of Students, and we have a process by which these students are then reviewed and decisions are made, and the Chancellor has shared the outcomes of those, and that has led to either students being forced to leave the dorms, or actually students being suspended or being terminated as students at this campus. And so we have made it very clear that our preference is not to take a punitive approach, but we have tried to take a very proactive approach through all of the announcements and advertisements. But we are prepared to take disciplinary actions when students violate our community standards. And so I just want you to know that we remain diligent and vigilant, in that respect.
Thank you. Jacob.
Hi, to kind of return to an earlier point, we've talked a lot about the interconnectivity, and I was curious as to how that was also reflected in the attempt to centralize a lot more of the financial decisions within the university, and how that might potentially affect career advancement, because more centralization might result in redundancies being eliminated, which is cost effective, but not necessarily the best for creating new opportunities internally.
Yeah, this might be a good to turn to Becky to get her thoughts on it, but I know that, part of, if you think back to the Bain report from 2009, for those of you who have been here that long, the Bain report, talked about a lot of consolidation and, looked at shared services, and some of the schools were able to do that. I know in the college where I served as senior associate dean and then dean, we were working on that even when I entered the dean's office in 2013, trying to work on shared services around some of the HR functions. Didn't quite get there for a lot of the finance operations, but I think that is back on the table for consideration. But I also, we want to try to promote career advancement, as Bob already indicated in the strategic plan, to enhance, the upward mobility in that strategic initiative that Becky's leading. Isn't about, necessarily just eliminating jobs. It's about creating opportunities for staff. So I hear the concern, but I think we have to look at how we can become more efficient in some ways. Becky, I don't know if you want to jump in and give a reaction to that. It's a good question.
Sure. I think you're making all the right points, Kevin. And sort of as you talk, you realize that sort of creating opportunities while also managing a budget, while also working within the state HR system, just demonstrates just how nuanced and complicated these things are. If they were easy, we'd be done with them already. And I would probably be enjoying some sort of fancy retirement. But instead, we're really trying to pull apart what are the policies and structures that we have in place that are limiting career advancement for people within our community, or that don't allow us to be as efficient as we might like as an organization. And what can we do to change those? Are those things in local authority? Are they system policies? Are they state policies? And that's where when I give my update later, we talked to the personnel committee the other day, and we're talking about ways we can partner on advocacy in getting some of those things changed. Then there's the bigger question of how is it that we do our work? And if we think about things like the administrative function of finance and HR, there's a center, and then there's unit-based pieces. And do those look exactly the way they should? We look different than other institutions, but that's also because our policies and our structures are a little different. But are there ways that we can become more efficient there? And then how is it that we build on the interests and aspirations of our own people, and what's holding, what are other things that might be holding them back, or what is the work that we're doing that's limiting that capacity? So I think we have to look at it from all of those angles, but we know that Carolina only works because of all the people that work here. So finding the way to be the most efficient with the people we have so that we can compensate those people appropriately, that we can grow the university in the ways that make the most sense, but that also we can manage a budget that will work for us to continue to do what our mission says we should do moving into the future. So that's sort of an answer that gives you a set of approaches that we're taking, and that will require all of your input, but not an answer that says we've got it figured out.
I think the other aspect of this, Jacob, is that the way the university has historically worked in a highly decentralized, non-integrated financial model presents incredible risk to everybody. And in fact, a lot of the challenges that we are facing today is now being made evident because we have been in a highly decentralized, non-integrated financial model. And so, so I think a big part of the centralization here is not necessarily to take jobs away or to add jobs. It's really to try to make sure that we have an infrastructure that can support the entire financial needs of this university in a way that is not only efficient, but is competent. And so I think we need to achieve that for everybody's security. Failure to have a secure, safe, integrated financial university is not in anyone's self-interest. And so, so I think that there also will be a lot of new opportunities that are going to come out of this kind of integrated system. So it's not like the center is going to be the only entity. We're going to still need to have the same kind of connectivity in the decentral environments. It's just that the systems and the flows are going to be a little bit different. But the opportunities career-wise, I think, are going to be greater in this new model, not less. And I think there'll be greater opportunities for advancement for those people who are ambitious and want to do more within the context of their job career here.
Great. We've had, Kim has had her hand up for a while.
Hi, my name is Kim Swain, and I'm bouncing back to the previous discussion about compliance. Today's headline story in The Well is about staying connected and active during the pandemic. And the photo shows a picture of two masked women standing within a foot of each other. So I wrote to the editor and was told it was missed in the heat of a deadline pressure. And I'm just wondering, do we think the student body gets and respects the 3 Ws?
I mean, I can tell you, Kim, it's a good question. I've not seen the photo yet. And I think, was the picture of students or was the picture of staff in the well? At any rate, I look out my window for most of the day here, including on Sunday. I was in here with the provost for several hours. And I can tell you that I see students abiding by the 3 Ws. I mean, and so you might say, well, that's a relatively small sample, but I do believe that within the confines of the campus, where we have signage up, where students know that there are people watching, I do believe they are respecting the 3 Ws. You know, I know that there's some challenges in the residence halls, but I think our RAs and the staff there are doing an incredible job under difficult circumstances. We do have single occupancy now in all those residence halls. There's not a residence hall where there are roommates living together, with the exception of Beatty Hill, where we have graduate family housing. But you know, and then you get beyond the campus, and again, as I walk Chapel Hill and get my you know, morning runs in, I'm always watching, and so I do believe our students are trying really hard, as Bob just said earlier. I think that they realize that they have a responsibility. They recognize that we got off to a tough start last fall, even though many of the students then were abiding by the 3 Ws and the COVID-19 standards. So we just have to keep reminding folks whenever we see that they're not.
Yeah, Kim, if I could just respond. I'm looking at the picture right now, and it is of a few students. They look like students. They look young to me, so I'll just assume that they're students. They are outside, and they are masked, and so based upon all recommendations, they are in compliance, you know, of our standard. They are outside. And they are masked, and the amount of time that they are there together would be another factor. So of course we're always looking to mitigate risk. That's what our programs are all about, to reduce risk and to ask people to behave responsibly. If you're outside and you're 6 feet apart, you at least based on the standards, you don't even need to be wearing a mask based upon current best practice. So I would just ask, you know, perhaps to be careful not to misjudge, you know, what people are doing when in fact they may be in compliance.
Yep.
Thank you.
Gloria.
So Shana, this is Kevin. So I am sorry, but I have a 10 o'clock that I have to jump into. And so I'm going to hang for this last question, but then I'm going to have to jump off. So I apologize.
And thank you for sticking as long as you could. Let's, Gloria.
Thanks so much. And thanks to all for joining us. This question is probably more for Becky than anyone. I'm wondering, there's been a lot of discussion with the latest news about women dropping out of the workforce. And I wonder what the data look like for women at the University of North Carolina. And I'm wondering to the Chancellor and the Provost, if we expect to see some natural attrition. And is this a way of handling the budget, not necessarily eliminating positions, but when people leave, that we won't replace them?
Yeah, well, let me just say that we, right now, as Becky maybe can speak more to this, as every week we look at vacant positions, and a lot of units are, you know, they're managing the budget cuts in some cases by not filling those vacant positions or swapping them with another one that they think is less essential. I have not looked at the data regarding, you know, the retention of our women, you know, employees, and they are critical to our campus, you know, operations. And so I hope that we don't see that trend here. But I think we do have to look at, how we've heard from a lot of employees that they feel they can perhaps continue to work remotely. And I think Becky and I and Bob and others have talked about this, is there in that toolbox that Becky is building about how we can help maintain a strong and healthy, vibrant workforce while managing some of the challenges of COVID and the budget? Might there be options for some employees to continue to work remotely, even post-pandemic? Perhaps maybe it is at a reduced FTE if they feel that there are efficiencies by not needing to get to campus and they can carry out their work in a slightly reduced FTE, that where there would be trade-offs for them with driving to campus, dealing with parking, maybe offsetting some of the childcare needs that they might not otherwise need to pay if they were able to work remotely part of the time. So I think there's some options here, and I think Becky's building a great toolbox. So I'm going to turn to her for the rest of it. Hopefully I haven't screwed that up, Becky.
No, I think you've done a great job, Kevin. And Laura, I don't actually have the data for most recently, but we did look early in the pandemic, and the sense was that we were not seeing turnover among women at higher rates than previously. And we thought that was in part because the benefits that the state had been providing really were allowing people about as much flexibility as we could muster, in that they were still being largely able to work remotely. Supervisors were being asked to be flexible, and there were resources, financial and with benefits associated with some of those things. We have seen an uptick in retirements. I haven't looked at those based on gender, but it's not surprising. Usually at the end of a calendar year, we see an uptick in retirements. We have seen with the pandemic people saying, you know what, I think I'm eligible, it's time, I'm going to go do something else, or I'm not going to sit on Zoom any longer. We do anticipate that the retirement option, where it's voluntary and people are leaving, will give us some opportunity to manage the budget or think about those positions as opportunities moving forward. And then, as I've mentioned previously, there is a proposal in front of the General Assembly from the system office requesting that we have an early retirement tool for those who are near eligible but not yet eligible, that would give them a voluntary option to leave early, such that we would be able to use those vacancies as part of our budget management. Again, as somebody pointed out earlier, those are using vacancies to protect the jobs of the people who are here. They are not always the most strategic. So to Kevin's point earlier, there are times when you have to use that vacancy and then move something else around in order to take the position that you think is probably the best one to manage in order to be the most strategic. So it is definitely a more complicated game. But we have been, and game is probably not the right term, but it's a much more complicated effort to sort of figure out how to use those departures. But we have been working with units and encouraging them to look at existing vacant positions, voluntary departures that leave vacancies, and then if they have vacancies that are anticipated as a result of retirements, or in the case of faculty, some planned phased retirements, those may be options to consider as they manage the budget moving forward.
So Shana, I'm going to have to jump off. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in the roundtable. This has been fun, and thanks for all that you do for us. So
thank you very much for being with us.
Okay.
And I think this is a good point to move on to our first presenter. So Provost Blouin, you're welcome to stay with us if you'd like, but we're going to move on to, I've switched to Cheryl to go first. Is she with us? And Cheryl, do you need to share your screen?
I am here. Thank you, Shana, and thank you, Employee Forum, for having me. Mia's on with me, and she will share the screen. We're going to run through a quick presentation. And obviously, I'll take some questions afterwards. Just wanted to sort of provide an update. I think the request from the Employee Forum was to talk about enforcement practices and that sort of thing that's relative to the last, I'm going to say since March, since we sort of went out related to the COVID impacts. And so just a couple of things for the body. So primarily one of our core responsibilities during this time is to ensure that our fire lanes are enforced to ensure public safety access for emergency responders to our buildings. And so that's something that has been a consistent thing even since we went out. Reserve spaces, so that's one of the things that we have had to be mindful of. Our ADA access spaces, our service spaces, loading docks, those sorts of things we've managed throughout the pandemic. We've worked a lot with attention and warning citations through this whole period. Even when we put parking regulations back into effect, we still have tried to work from an education standpoint, primarily because we just made a lot of changes to the system to be responsive to new university operations. And then lastly, citations that have a fine associated with them. That's been sort of our last resort as we try to manage the campus parking system during this period. So this is just a timeline relative to what we've done associated with enforcement during this period. So from March 18th through July 31st, the only enforcement that we did on campus was that initial and sort of public safety piece of it. We enforced the fire lanes, sidewalks, landscape, and reserved spaces on campus. Otherwise, there was no permit regulations in place. And so there were no citations issued through July 31st. In effect, the majority of the ordinance was suspended, and the Chancellor has those emergency powers to do that. We worked through the ordinance, which is a regulatory that's approved by the Board of Trustees, but made some decisions relative to enforcement or our permitting system just based on where we were at as a campus. So March 18th through July 31st, we only issued citations, and in some cases other than fire lanes, we would even issue warnings in those spaces just to tell people that you can't park here. So August 1st, obviously, when we were bringing students back and we were coming back into the academic year, we put the parking regulations back into effect. So we still continue to enforce the fire lane sidewalks, but we made a conscientious decision, or at least I did, for the campus to say, we switched our whole permitting system to a virtual permit. There was a lot of things going on. So we were only issuing attention citations and notices for people who did not have a valid permit from August 1st through October 13th. So we still weren't issuing a real citation to somebody without a permit, unless, I mean, again, if we had given someone like 3 warnings for not having a permit, they may have received a citation. But other than that, it was mostly an educational period because we went to virtual permits, and we're telling people, you need to either, backing in, we're reading with license plate recognition as part of our efficiencies and how we're managing the system now. And then attention citations to say that, hey, yes, permits are required now. And so October 14th through present, we're enforcing the ordinance and the regulations. We're still issuing warnings for back in and pull through parking that's related to the virtual permits. But we really didn't start writing any citations relative to no valid permits until October 14th. So just some strategies, just to remind folks of some of the strategies that we incorporated to support the roadmap and changes to our work and class schedules. So as all of you know, we had hang tag permits that were part of our credentialing system for this parking operations. But due to social distancing and just our need to be able to be very flexible with how we issue parking credentials, we went to virtual permits, which is why we need to be able to see the license plate, because we are reading license plates as the permit for being able to park on campus. And then we moved to semester permits for our students. So much of the available resources on campus when we were moving into in-person classes went to the students. So students have a very limited access on campus, very limited permit access. So I shifted a lot of their those resources based on what we were doing with schedules to our student population, or and worked with the schools and others to be able to do that. But we went to semester permits as we were making decisions about it when we were uncertain, you know, how fall would look and then how spring would look. We went to semester permits for the students to be as flexible with the on-campus availability. We moved to honoring the weeknight parking permits at 4 p.m. So students typically, the weeknight permits are honored at 5, but there were changes to schedules. We were doing more evening classes and just very diverse schedules to try to build the social distancing. So we put in place that we would honor weeknight at 4 instead of 5 to help with that. Reduce teleworking and hybrid schedule pricing. So just to acknowledge the fact that many students were, I mean, there were less extracurricular, there were less times that faculty and staff needed to come to campus. So we reduced teleworking and reduced the pricing to allow for teleworking and hybrid schedules. That was probably represented a 50% reduction in student permits and about a 40 to 50% reduction in the employee cost of permits. And then we introduced a lot of daily permit options just to recognize people's changes in on-campus presence. So if somebody was just coming in once every 2 weeks to accomplish something, they could get a daily permit option. And just some of the things that we added to that for the spring. The fall semester student permits were honored through December 31st for the students that would remain on campus. Fall semester wait list for employee permits. Because of what we didn't know about what was going to happen in the spring, we released many permits to employees that were coming to campus that wouldn't necessarily get those lots if the campus was normal. But based on how we moved into the spring semester, we automatically renewed those employee waiting lists. So employees that had received permits from the waiting list, they were extended through the spring and the summer. And then our employee wait list opened again December 14th, and we are releasing those bi-weekly for people who do need campus access. And these are just some changes to our point-to-point services. And I'm happy to provide these slides, Shana, so I can try to hurry through this. But we've just made changes working with our advisory committees related to on-demand and our point-to-point services to serve our student population and employees as well with the after dark and our ADA services. And then Chapel Transit, obviously with social distancing, we had to reduce the number of routes. Chapel Transit's been very good about working with us throughout the pandemic to try to provide services. Our regional partners continue to provide services into campus. We have discontinued the Safe Ride service, which is a Thursday through Saturday night, early Sunday morning service that serves Franklin, and have worked with our student representatives due to the closures at 10 p.m. There's just really no need for 11 p to 2 a.m. service during this period over the weekends. And then just safety measures. This is something that we continually get questions about. The masks are required. Each one of the agencies have specific safety measures that they have in place. Rear door boarding, separation of the drivers, increased sanitation. Chapel Transit has installed improved air filtration on all of their buses, as well as UV light sanitation. And that is it, Shane, and I'm happy to take questions.
Are there any questions for Cheryl?
I have a question. And this is for this is more a concern. One of the challenges that I just want to hear your opinion about blocking the meter parking early during the day when there are no events going on and when there is no construction. And this is in main road areas that are utilized by not only employees but also visitors, people that may have disabilities. Blocking these parkings, it reduce the option of an employee that has a mandate reason to be in the university and maybe park for a few hours and they don't have a parking, or maybe for a person that has a disability that needs to get to an area and they cannot take public transportation because of risk of being exposure or disabilities that are not non-visual. this practice. I'm just trying to understand, because I have, and my colleagues, I'm not afraid to say that my colleagues know that I have non-visual disabilities. I cannot take public transportation. I was waiting for the Parking Accommodation Committee to approve my parking. I had a mandated purpose in the university, and I needed to park. It was early in the afternoon. It was around 12 p.m. There were no events scheduled at that time. I learned later, after I complained, because I did get a ticket, because I just needed to park. But what I heard was there was an event schedule, and that's a practice of the university. When I looked at the schedule, the event was for the evening hours, but all the parking meters were black during the day. And I just want to know if this is something that you guys may want to look at later, maybe revise that policy, because as a person with disabilities, I was looking for a place to park. I became very anxious. My judgment, I was anxious. I didn't want to be late for work. I had to park somewhere. And when I went back to my car immediately, I had already received a ticket of $50, because the parking people there were actually around. There's not that many people. So I just want to know if you guys are going to look at this practice later on, how this potentially impacts people that have non-visual disabilities, or if this is something that is going to continue on just because the university has been doing it for several years.
So thank you for bringing this up. That's that would be, I'm a little unfamiliar with it. So I know you guys have a busy agenda, but do you mind communicating like directly with me with the time? And the Mia's also on the call, so she can drop you an email real quick and we can schedule a time. If you can give me some specifics about it, because we may have had an event, I'm not sure. But on the other hand, depending on if it was at one of the gyms or something like that, if you can give me some specifics in it, then I can look it up with my staff and see if there's some practice that I'm unfamiliar with or that I feel like is a problem, then I can address it personally with my staff.
Yes,
because I concur. There are things that we would typically do that we worked very hard to be in a very non-typical space during this period. So yeah, if you'll just, Mia's on the call, so she'll drop you an email, and we're happy to get back together specifically with you and see what sort of issue occurred. And then I can go back through my staff to see why we did that on that particular day.
Thank you.
But thank you for bringing that to my attention, yes.
Cheryl, but before you go, there's just one more question that's in the chat, and somebody's asking, who enforces the passenger limit on the buses?
So Chapel Transit, the drivers don't engage in, I don't think they engage in sort of like, get off the bus if one extra person gets on the bus. That's been a very delicate thing for Chapel Transit. They have had very good compliance with these things, but if you have some specific information, I'm happy to address that with the director of Chapel Transit. We stay in direct contact very frequently, almost on a weekly basis, if not more. So if you've got a particular concern about a route or something, I can talk to Brian specifically about it, especially if maybe there's a capacity issue where they might need to try to put another bus on a route to try to accommodate additional people.
Yeah, it looks like this person is mentioning it's around the time where people are getting off work, 4 to 5:30 in the health sciences area.
And I think, Sana, there may have been something in there about, so in October, Chapel Transit did move from 10 to 16. So they did move from a 6-foot to a 3-foot capacity on the buses based on the recommendations that they had received through the health department and those sorts of things. So they did move that up, and we did try to make sure that we message that out to the campus. And
Got
so
it.
I'm not sure if it's beyond those capacities. Again, I'm happy to look into the very specifics of it and reach out to Brian if we feel like there's some problem, or if we need to ask for additional assets to manage demand during a period.
Great. We will keep an eye on it and reach out to you if we see stuff happening in different timeframes in different areas.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you,
And,
Cheryl.
yeah, and just to anybody on the forum, we tried to work very closely with the different units and the different schools, but if anytime that you have specific issues relative to transportation and parking, always feel free to reach out. We'll do our best to try to address those issues.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl.
I do want to say that
Any
I've
other-
had, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that I know that the people in my department are very thankful for the reduced fees for when they're only on campus once or twice a week. They really appreciate, like, I'm not using it. It's so nice not to pay full price when I'm not using it full time.
So thank you. That work prior to us coming back was definitely a collective effort with our advisory group, which Shana and Laura both participate in, but others from across campus representation helped us develop a plan. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Cheryl. You are welcome to come back anytime, as you know. Take care. Jen, you're up.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your patience. I know we've been going for a little over an hour now, so if you need to stand up and move around and kind of shake it out, I will not take it personally. I'm going to share my screen. Yep, there we go. All right, so my name is Jen DeNeal. I'm the Associate Director of the Ethics and Policy Office here at UNC-Chapel Hill. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit today about our Policy Review Committee. And you'll see kind of where that fits into the broader policy world here in just a few minutes. So here's a quick agenda. I'm going to talk about a few foundational things before we jump into the Policy Review Committee, including our process for electronic policy management and just a really 30,000-foot overview of the policy life cycle. Then we'll talk about the committee, and then we will have some time for questions. Okay. So first, thinking about electronic policy management, I want to draw your attention to Policy Stat. Policy Stat is our official electronic policy repository for UNC university policies. This is the authoritative source of policy. Part of the reason that Policy Stat came around just about 3 or 4 years ago, was because policies had a tendency to be stored all over the place, in people's personal drives, in desk drawers, on websites, and it made it very difficult to find policy. And so one of the solutions to that was to create this electronic policy repository. All university policies are hosted in Policy Stat, and many unit level documents, so school level documents, are also stored in Policy Stat. And I'm happy to talk with you at length if you would like, not today. If you are interested in getting your units, policies, procedures, or standards into Policy Stat. Okay, as promised. This is the policy life cycle. You can see it as a very complicated flow chart that we are not going to talk about in detail today. I will kind of promote my colleague, Matthew Teal, who is also a member of the Employee Forum. He does a fabulous Policy 101 training for university stakeholders who are not familiar with kind of the way we do policy at UNC. And I would say he would be awesome to come to a future Employee Forum meeting and do this in detail. Also, we're happy to do trainings for your units or departments if you would just like to have those a little bit more one-on-one. And there are some virtual resources that are on our website that I'll point out at the end of the presentation. What we're going to talk about today, though, is what's inside the green circle on your screen. So in step 2, which is policy review, there are a couple of things that happen here. So at this point, you have a policy, you have looked at it within your own department. The person who is the issuing officer or the owner of the policy has gone through and kind of done some internal revisions. And now it's time to take this to a broader audience. So before something comes to the PRC, We expect that you have vetted it pretty thoroughly within your unit and that you have already sent it to the Office of University Counsel, because we want to make sure everything we're doing is legal. And so the Policy Review Committee only looks at substantive changes without going too deeply into this flowchart. If what you're doing is correcting typos or updating the name of your department, those kinds of things don't come to the Policy Review Committee. Well, let's dive, now that we know what goes into the Policy Review Committee, let's talk about what it is. The Policy Review Committee is made up of stakeholders from all across campus. And just on my next, in 2 slides, you'll see a full list of all the people who are on it. We try to have broad representation from all schools and administrative units. However, the Policy Review Committee is not an approval body. The primary functions of the Policy Review Committee are to provide feedback to the policy issuing officers on how they could make things more clear, any questions that people might have, how this policy might affect constituencies outside of the unit that's creating it, and also to help communicate those policy changes. So we all know, we hear about it all the time, UNC is a wildly decentralized place. And it can be really difficult to communicate, especially when we all get as many emails as we do. So part of the function of the PRC is that departments and units and groups know that they have a representative who they can talk to and find out what's been going on with policy at UNC. Let's take a look at what the process looks like. So the Policy Review Committee meets each month. And in general, the ideal process we would like to see for the Policy Review Committee is that the policy liaisons, who these are the people who serve on the committee, receive the updates that are coming to the PRC that month. And I send those out about 1 week prior to the PRC meeting. We would like for those folks to review their documents and to share them as appropriate with their stakeholders and constituencies. That week prior to the meeting is when we like for the policy liaisons to submit any comments, either that they have personally or that they have received from people they represent, so that the policy issuing officer has some time to look over those prior to the meeting. And then at the meeting, we discuss the policies, we provide feedback on the documents, offer suggested changes, and kind of generally think about how these policies will affect the broader UNC-Chapel Hill community. I say this is the ideal process. Honestly, like the PRC is only, my office and the PRC are only about 4 years old. And so this has been evolving over time, and we're finally arriving at a place where we think we have a really good process for how we want this to look. So the members of the Policy Review Committee, I will not read all of these for you because you are all completely capable of doing that yourselves. These are all the schools and units who are represented on the PRC at this time. As you can see here, the 4th person down, the Employee Forum is represented by Miss Stephanie Brown, Dr. Stephanie Brown, Miss Dr. Stephanie, who's amazing. And so Stephanie has been your liaison, and she has been attending meetings and representing staff interests. And she and I had a great conversation about how we really want to kind of move that process to the next level. And so you're going to start receiving emails from Stephanie each month. Those emails will include policy action from the prior month, so things that happened the month before, and also what's coming to the PRC meeting in whatever month we're in. So the PRC meeting for February is a couple of weeks, and my office will have that policy action for January report done by the end of this week. So I would expect to see your email from Stephanie within the next week or so, week or two, I guess probably 2 weeks, with what's going to be happening this month. And she will be in touch directly with how she's going to solicit feedback from you and how that's going to work. But I want to pause for a minute to let Stephanie say hi. So because I know we have a lot of new people on the forum, so I want you to be able to put a face with a name. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Thanks, Jen. Yes, I'm Stephanie. I am your policy liaison for the forum. And as Jen kind of scooped me a little bit, we are amending our policy, our internal policy, on how you submit thoughts about policies. So as she said, starting next week, I'm going to be sending monthly emails to get you ready and make you aware of what's happening. And included in those emails, I'm going to send a Google form link where you can provide feedback. And essentially what I will be sending out are probably the executive summaries for policies that are coming up. If there's any that you want to see in full, you can absolutely reach out to me. I will send you all of the text And then if you have just any concerns, if it's a policy, especially policies related to HR, or obviously ones that you might have a lot of thoughts and feelings about, and you just want to say, hey, Stephanie, when you guys are talking about this policy, please make sure to bring up, childcare or something related to folks who might be in a situation similar to mine. So whatever your concerns are, you can just send me a note of them and I'll bring them then to the policy committee, and I can feel like I'm doing a better job of representing your concerns more directly. So back to you, Jen.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. And I also wanted to point out that on the screen right now, you can absolutely go through Stephanie as your representative, and you can also share those concerns with whoever the representative is for the unit in which you reside, in which you work. So don't feel like you can only communicate through Stephanie, or that you shouldn't communicate through Stephanie. You can communicate lots of ways to all the liaisons that you want, and you can always feel free to send any concerns to me or to Matt directly. All right, because this is the forum and we like to kind of bring new things here before they're completely public knowledge, I'm gonna give you a little teaser that coming soon, Policy Stat, which I just made kind of a big deal out of saying it's really important and you should know about it, is going away. So this spring, we are going to have a new policy management system. I can't really give you too many more details about that right now, but just be aware that we will have a new system. It will still be electronic, it will still be online, but that will be coming a little bit later this spring. And we're hoping to have a system that is a little bit more user-friendly and is very intuitive and kind of also coordinates a little bit better with our UNC websites and doesn't seem quite so alien. So before I jump into questions, I'm going to change my share here really fast. Share. Nope. This one. Okay, so what you see here, this is our website. And I just want to call attention to this. We are at ethicspolicy.unc.edu. We live within the Institutional Integrity and Risk Management unit. And a couple of things that I want you to see. So first of all, down here at the bottom in our news, we are going to have each month, and this is something that we just started this year, a policy review committee recap. So if you'd like to know what's discussed at the meeting and what happens, this is going to be a news article that is going to be on our news page every month from here on forward. And that should come out, if I do my job really well, the day after the policy review committee meeting. So that would come out the following Friday. Also, I want to draw attention to our training page. So I mentioned Matt Teal and his awesome training powers. He put those into virtual formats for you all. So we have a couple of different Policy 101 trainings, and then there are a number of Policy Stat trainings. And of course, once we have our new system, these will be updated to match the new system. But these are a really great place to get kind of an overview of what's happening with policy at UNC. Also, on our Policy Process tab, we have a whole tab related to the Policy Review Committee. And so if you go to this policy review committee, you can see all of our members with their photos. You can see when the meetings are and when the deadlines are, so that things can get submitted, so that you'll have a sense of when you'll be seeing those emails coming in from Stephanie. We do post our agendas online under the meeting materials and under policy action. Stephanie's going to be emailing these to you, but if you can't find the email, you can find which policies have been updated each month on our policy action page. So with that, I will go back to the our contact us information so that you have it. This is our office. We are over in Carolina Square now these days. I would say come visit, and I completely mean it, just as soon as the pandemic is more under control. This is our small but mighty team, and of course our website is there. And I've already sent these slides to Matt, to Matt Banks, but I'm happy to send them out to anyone who wants those. Just please let me know. So with that, I've seen a couple of chats come in. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. But I am happy to answer any questions. What questions do we have?
Okay. I have a
Go ahead, Kevin.
Does your office do any sort of workshops or training about how to write policy guidance for a business unit or a school or et cetera, et cetera?
So in terms of actually writing the policy itself?
Or
what do you mean?
not how to write the policy, like a specific policy, but how to, like, I just jumped into one of the 101s and like it said things must be written in active voice, and I don't know what active voice is. So like how to do the thing that needs to be done.
Absolutely. And the fact that that sentence says it must be written in passive voice just actually hurt, or in active voice just hurt my soul, because that sentence is written in passive voice. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
There you go.
So we're happy to do some of that. I think that's some training we would like to build out more and have on our website, but we are absolutely happy to sit down and talk best practices. One of the presentations we gave to the PRC last year was going over plain language guidelines, because that's a trap that people fall into with policy pretty frequently. They like to shall all over the place. And we really are trying to promote plain language and policy that people can understand. So we're happy to do that with you. Just let me know if that's something you'd be interested in.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Sure thing. All right, I see a question from Rose. Does your office get looped in before schools change their policies? Say, for instance, APT policy for faculty, OHR policies, do they invite you or are you automatically incorporated? Great question. So there's a lot wrapped up in that. First thing I will say is that our office deals with administrative policies, not academic policies. And that was something that back when our office was created, the working groups that were created in the wake of the academic and athletic scandal several years ago made the recommendation for how our office should be formed. And they believe very strongly that there should be this kind of wall between academic and administrative policies, since academic policies are created by the faculty governance system. So when we look at something like appointment, promotion, and tenure, our office does not look at those or approve those because those are firmly academic policies. Now, that being said, I was on a working group that was helping to kind of revise APT policies this year, but it is not a formal responsibility of our office. Generally speaking, yes, units do loop us in when they go to change their policies. If they are major substantive changes, those policies have to come to, if they are university level policies, they have to come to the policy review committee. So when we're looking at something like OHR policies, those affect the entire university, they are university policies, and they come to the PRC. I would say that in many cases we get looped in just because it's helpful to have that collaboration. And other times we have a unit that really knows what they're doing. They know what their changes need to be, particularly if they're regulatory changes. If the federal government says thou shalt do this thing, we have to do that. We don't really get a whole lot of leeway there. So in some cases, the unit goes ahead and makes that change and then says, hey, we need to bring this to the PRC so that they understand what those changes are. Other questions?
Gloria, do you want to ask your question?
Okay, since that might be easier. I was just going through and trying to search a couple of policies I've been thinking about and still can't find them. And I wonder if there might be some guidance or training on how do you come up with the language that might be in the policies that you might not have in your head because it's certain jargon that you may not, typically use. Is there guidance for finding these policies?
So there is not right now, and I'm going to punt on this just a little bit because I think that guidance could change with our new system. It's going to depend a little bit on how good this new system search engine is, because Policy Stack can be very weird when searching. I mean, there are things that I have searched for and I know the name of the policy and it still shows up as like the 7th choice on the search instead of the first thing. But that is really good feedback, and I'm going to take that down just because I think there are some general things, like if you're thinking about HR policies, here are the keywords that are important. If you're thinking about finance policies, here are the keywords that are important. So that's something that I think we can absolutely create, and that's a great question. Thank you, Gloria.
So Jen, if you don't mind me jumping in.
No, please.
So there is a training on our resources page dealing specifically with how to search, and the system, like Jen said, is a little quirky. There's full text search opportunities. You can search by, if you know the issuing officer, you can search exclusively for documents published by that person. You can search by, if you know the unit that published the document. So there's sort of different avenues or angles to get to the place you're trying to go. But I would say check out the video, and I'm happy to connect with you as well one-on-one to do a training or to help you find a specific policy that you're looking for.
Yeah, I should say the bottom line is we are always happy to help. We
Yes. Yep.
love connecting with people. We very much consider ourselves a service, like a customer service group when it comes to policy. So please, please ask us questions if you have them, and don't worry about reaching out. Any other questions or comments?
I do. Are the trainings available on your webpage or through Carolina Talent?
So currently they are on our webpage, and I think we can work on getting those in Carolina Talent, particularly the Policy 101 trainings, but those are on our website on the resources page right now.
Right now, the trainings are just embedded. They're basically embedded YouTube links, videos. So we would need to think through how to migrate that content into Carolina Talent.
Okay, thank you, Jen and Matt and team and Stephanie. This was very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you want to stop your screen share? Excellent. We're back. Hi, everybody. And moving on to our HR updates.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I think you have heard a little bit from me, and Kevin sort of prompted some of the things that I was going to say. And we've also had a really long agenda, and I know we're nearing the end of the meeting. So I don't have a big list. I texted Shayna early in the meeting and said I was a little bit distracted this morning working on another personnel matter. So I was off for a bit, and I'm not sure whether Kevin talked at all about vaccines. Did he mention that at all? No?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just give a brief update because this has come up in a number of meetings. Several people, I was in a meeting yesterday and somebody said in their department, they said, I'm just waiting for the university to tell me when I can get my vaccine. And then somebody else said, I just want to know what the university is doing to get my vaccine. And I just want to make sure everybody here knows, don't wait for the university to send you an email if you're hoping to get the vaccine. So we want to encourage everybody who wants the vaccine to get the vaccine. There is, as you know, an effort to get healthcare providers done through phase 1, and they are also working on those who are 65 or older right now. As we move into later phases, we have provided information on behalf of the university for those employees who are over 65 so that those folks can be contacted. But likewise, if you're over 65 and you have connections to a source, you should by all means sign up and get the vaccine wherever you can. And just because we provided a list doesn't mean that that means you're going to get a vaccine from there. So I just want to be clear, I'm doing a really terrible job of keeping the frame and the sense of the stuff that's in my head and spitting it out to you. But let me go back and say, the university is not responsible for the distribution of vaccines, and we are also not responsible for determining who gets the vaccines when. That is all being navigated through the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and the individual county health departments. Again, I want to repeat, the university is not administering vaccines or making decisions about the vaccines. That said, the university is trying to advocate on behalf of its employees to ensure that those who want vaccines have the opportunity to get them. So in particular, those who are eligible right now as either healthcare providers or those over 65, we certainly want to encourage that. There is the line in the stage or phase 3 guidance, which says educators on the front lines would be eligible for vaccines in phase 3. Several of you and others have asked, what does educator mean? And I now think the language has been expanded some, and it perhaps uses something other than educator. that is where the university has gotten involved in trying to advocate to have that be as broad and expansive definition as possible, so that it includes not just faculty or those who are teaching in the classroom, but others who might have direct contact with students, or maybe in a workplace environment with a spatial distancing of fewer than 6 feet. We are advocating for that definition to be expanded. We do not get to define the definition. And ultimately, I don't know that we've seen yet, at least I haven't seen, a final definition. We are doing our best to get as many people into that definition as possible. I will tell you, if you are working remotely, you will not be eligible in that, that phase. That is entirely for frontline people who are on site the majority of the time. That does not mean you won't be eligible at a later point. It just means in that phase 3 on-site frontline employee educator definition, you would not be eligible there. That's a lot of information, and I realize it's probably fairly confusing. I just want to be very clear that the university is doing our best to advocate on your behalf and will provide as much information, which seems to be changing on a daily basis, as possible. But you should also try to, if you're interested in getting a vaccine, and we hope you are, try to follow the status of when vaccines are available and where they're available and when, and plan accordingly. Any questions on that? I see a few hands.
So Becky, I think that some of the confusion came when we were advocating to become in stage 3, and what does educator mean? And some units are collecting names for on-site folks. So I think that created some confusion as to where do people actually go to sign up. Do they still go to the Orange County, whatever it is, the online survey? And how did the two lists match?
So at this stage in the game, we are providing as much information to Orange County Health Department at this point in time about the numbers of people we have on campus currently working, so we know a max number without doing the individual poll of this person's frontline, this person is not, that sort of thing. We're not at that level of detail. That is, as I understand it, and admittedly, I'm going to be very upfront and transparent. I'm on the outskirts of this discussion, but I certainly know that we have tried to be of assistance. That is as much for numbers planning as anything. We can and will provide more information so that when the definition is defined fully, we can say, yep, these people qualify, and share those lists, but we're not quite there yet. So, and how the then connection goes from our sharing the list and then people getting the vaccine, I understand some of that is being done through messaging directly to the emails that are provided, and then also some is being done through healthcare units. I can get some more clarity on that, and really I need to rely on Kathy Brennan and her team because they are the experts. I am probably just dangerous enough to provide misinformation, and that's not helpful at all. I just wanted everybody to understand that I think there's been a lot of confusion because the university has been involved in trying to help advocate, that I think there's some understanding that we are making decisions about the distribution of vaccines. And there are plenty of things for people to be frustrated with the university about, myself included. This is just not one that we have that we're in charge of. So, and I don't want to be frustrated with Orange County or anybody else, but I want to be very clear about what our role is and what it is not in this process.
Okay, so perhaps we monitor this as we get closer to group 3 and maybe invite Kathy to our next meeting.
I think that's the best call. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, particularly those who are on the non-healthcare side, the occupational health can be a tremendous resource, and Kathy Brennan and her team. And there is a website stood up, and they are trying to update it regularly.
Great.
Other updates from my end are relatively brief. We have thus far managed the return of those employees who are coming to campus pretty well. We've answered a handful of questions. We do seem to be navigating the transition away from the FRACA benefits with relative ease. We have been providing additional benefits counseling to those who might have additional questions. But so far, we seem to be doing pretty well. We don't have a lot of additional requests. We've not seen a great number of additional requests for the shared leave bank as well. So we'll continue to keep you apprised of that. We continue to have people donate to the shared leave bank, so there is leave available should people need it. But at this stage in the game, for better or worse, people are sort of figuring out a stride of some sort in this really complicated time. And we continue to provide resources for those who need them. And we encourage you, if you do have questions about benefits, to reach out. But in the meantime, things are pretty steady state on that front. The last thing I want to mention is I said earlier that we met with Stephanie and Phil and Shayna earlier in the week. I know there have been some concerns, particularly as we talk about the budget discussions and as we navigate sort of the ongoing trying times related to the pandemic, as people are vacating jobs and assuming additional duties, what are our policies doing to impede or support those people taking on additional duties? And I know several people have raised concerns about the career banding portion or career banding rules, which say if you are taking on additional duties of a band below you or equal to you, you are not eligible for additional duties pay. And that is because that system is based on competencies. It doesn't contemplate doing more of the same thing, or that you might need to be paid more for taking on the duties of someone else. It's a foolish policy. I'll be the first to say it. It's one we're advocating for change. It is not, however, one that we have direct authority over. And so we're continuing to talk through ways we might help employees and units as they navigate employee transition. But I just wanted to let you all know that we are aware of that. We are talking about ways we might move forward on that. In better news, several of you have raised questions about the fact that if you apply for another job on campus, and you participate in an external search, meaning it's posted and people from outside and inside apply, and you get the job, you can only be offered a salary of 20% more than you're currently making, regardless of what the band is or the range is for the job. We believe this. I don't have a lot of data. We've been trying to pull some, but admittedly have been pulled in some other directions. We believe this has real, and we know it's inequitable in lots of ways, but we believe it has disparate impacts on several portions of our community. And we have been advocating for some time to get rid of this policy. The system and the Board of Governors have seen this as a promotion. I don't see that as a promotion. If you apply for a job and you get the job, and whether it has anything to do with what you did before or not, if you're eligible and the person from the outside is also eligible, and we would pay the person from the outside more, but we won't pay you more, that does not seem right. I am pleased to say, I think, made some progress in our advocacy on this one. I believe we're going to see some change. What that looks like, I don't yet know. It sounds as if, though, the system has heard not just from us, I know has heard some from you, I know has heard from the staff assembly, has heard from our colleagues across the campus, and I believe we are going to see change. I just don't have a timeline yet, but it's always nice. There's not enough good news these days, so even though it's not final, I feel like it's one thing I have to say because I'm just so excited about it. I can tell you that your colleagues in HR have hated this rule for a long time, and this is one that we're going to claim victory on, and then we're going to work on the next one. So more to come on that. I'll get you the full details of who it applies to, how it applies, when it doesn't apply, all of that as soon as I have the details. I'm just waiting on them. And then oh yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to interject there that we will absolutely help you with that, with our resolution that we are going to be having a first reading of today.
Excellent, excellent. Well, and I would be remiss if I didn't follow up Jen and Matt's policy stat update without saying, one, if you want to put the information in Carolina Talent, I know who to connect you to get that information to the Carolina Talent, and we can make that happen. And then two, sort of going on both what Jen said and having Stephanie as your liaison to that committee, we continue to look at HR policies. And you have heard me say a million times over that HR is fairly complicated in that we have 3 different standard employee types, SHRA, EHRA, and faculty. In each of those faculty types, there are subsets, and then there are often different rules and different governing bodies for each of those. Figuring out which policy applies to whom and in what way is sometimes a effort that actually takes Gloria's search problem and makes it even bigger. But it also means that the fact that there are so many policies means there are some inequities in the way we address things across the campus. We can't solve all of those because we don't, at least at this moment, we can't solve all of them because we don't have local authority for all of those things. But we are doing our best to pull those various policies apart, identify where they create, as I mentioned earlier, barriers to our people succeeding, to our people having career opportunities or growth opportunities. And if you identify policies that you think are problematic in sort of thinking about how you are progressing in your own career or how you might, we're looking at those, but we certainly want your feedback as well. So I'm gonna sort of leave it there. We can have a whole nother discussion about policy at another time, but I don't want this just to become a how do we write and respond to policy discussion. I want to also say, what are the policies we have and are they helping us or hurting us and getting where we need to go? And we want to be partners in that. So, and I know Anjanette and crew are on this call today, and they certainly, I know, join me in sharing interest in trying to figure out ways that we can use our policies to benefit all of us and guide the work we do for good, as opposed to seeing them as barriers that we have to jump over. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, but I'll stop there. And then I know Jessica is here with probably the single most important thing we're doing right now is ensuring that as a single soul, Jessica is trying to come up with ways to keep people well across the campus. She is our wellness champion, or she is the wellness champion of all the wellness champions. And she's been keeping as much activity as possible going. And we know that you all need everything. We all need everything we can right now to take care of ourselves. And I'm going to turn it over to Jessica.
Thank you so much, Becky. I really appreciate it. I know we are extremely short on time. I am going to share my screen. It'll take me just a second to pull up what I want. I hope that you're all seeing the heart attack symptoms on your screen. I was going to go over those. I'm leaving those for you to view, and I will share and drop a whole bunch of links in the chat box once I'm done speaking. But I did want to remind you that, February is an important month for all types of things. It is, Black History Month. It is also American Heart Month, and this Friday is National Wear Red Day. So I see some of you already wearing red today. I hope you have a lot of red in your closet and that you're able to dress in red on Friday as well. But Wear Red Day is the first Friday of every February, and it's to bring that awareness, to recognize that despite everything going on, cardiovascular disease is still the #1 killer of women. 1 in 3 women will lose their life due to cardiovascular disease. Someone passes away. There's 1 person every 80 seconds that passes away due to heart disease. And during this meeting alone, 112 women have passed away already. African American women are disproportionately impacted due to heart disease cardiovascular disease kills nearly 50,000 African American women every year. Of those who are 20 and older, 49% live with heart disease. This includes high cholesterol and high blood pressure, which should not be taken lightly. And I hope that everyone is still maintaining their annual primary care provider visits and regular screenings for cholesterol and blood pressure and diabetes, etc. 1 in 5 African American women believe that they are at risk, yet only 52% are aware of the signs and symptoms of a heart attack. So on your screen, you will see that signs and symptoms for both men and women, because women experience different signs and symptoms of a heart attack than men. Losing one woman is too many, and I encourage you to wear red on Friday to bring awareness to this #1 killer of women, and then share these signs and symptoms and other tools and resources with family and friends. For our Wellness Wednesday webinars that we have coming up this month, they start next week on the 10th at noon, and that topic is Loving You, the Art of Self-Acceptance. Things are getting, they're not getting any easier in time with everything that's going on. This session will help you replace that critical voice that might be inside of you with a positive self-regard. On Wednesday, February 24th, there will be a session on emotional intelligence, which will help you learn how to better control and respond to your emotions as opposed to reacting to them. All those can be found in Carolina Talent. The registration closes 3 days before each class. That's on Sundays. And the details about each session can be found on the Work, Life, and Wellness tab under HR Benefits. The Helping Heals registration list. This is a list of faculty, staff, students. If anyone is interested in providing part-time childcare, pet care, or elder care for a fellow Tar Heel, they can sign up to be a Helping Heals. That registration will be open until Sunday, February 14th. The Total Wellbeing Interest Survey is a once-a-year opportunity for us to collect information from faculty and staff on what their wellness interests are, their availability, why they're not participating. So there is a link to complete that brief survey to let us know what your top 3 wellness interests are for this year. May have changed since early 2020, and that will be open until Friday, February 19th. Eat Smart, Move More, Prevent Diabetes is a life-saving program, which is only $30 to participate in. It is for people who have been diagnosed with pre-diabetes, so not yet diabetic, or also for those who are at risk for diabetes. That program is $30 up front, but you get all that money back if you have good attendance and meet the metrics for getting that refund. Those sessions begin February 22nd. There is a brand new couples class. If you and your partner are both at risk for diabetes, those classes begin the 21st. Registration is open until the 19th. And again, I'm going to put these links in the chat box once I'm done speaking. The Total Wellbeing Expo, which is usually a lovely, well-attended in-person wellness event every March. Of course, it was postponed and then later canceled in 2020. We are taking it virtual this year, and it is transforming to an entire virtual wellness week. So mark your calendars for the week of March 8th through the 12th. We had 65 plus vendors reply to offer wellness sessions, fitness demonstrations, cooking demonstrations, and pre-recorded sessions for you to take advantage of that week. So we'll have an agenda out later this month. Pre-registration will be required. All sessions will be absolutely free, and we ask for you to participate in all that you're interested in. With your supervisor's approval, this will be work time. And then later this month, be on the lookout. The Governor's Awards nominations will be opening in February. I do not have details other than they will be open in February. So I'll share those when I have those. And if you're buying flowers this month, you can get a 25% discount off of Pro Flowers if you're spending $39 or more, just in case you have someone you want to send flowers to. And that is through Working Advantage. You also can receive 10% on KinderCare education childcare tuition. This is a new resource, a new discount offered through Working Advantage. So if you're not a member of that savings program, please sign up. And I'm available for any questions. You can email me or send me a message in the chat box, because I know we're approaching the end of the meeting here. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there any questions for Jessica?
There's one in the chat asking Jessica to post the link in the chat about the employee wellness, especially the emotional psychological support.
Absolutely, I'll do that. I'm trying to figure out how to stop sharing my screen at the moment. We'll get there.
We're taking a tour of your desktop.
Oh my goodness, it's amazing that it continues to function with all the things I have open. Thank
Understood.
you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? And for those of you who are not familiar with that, that means we are approving all the committees, and except if somebody wants to pull something out and just discuss something from their specific committee, and the minutes all in one fell swoop.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda with the note that I just put a couple of things about the blood drive in the chat that we don't need to talk about. They're in the chat for everyone.
And I will pull something out from staff assembly. Is there a second?
This is Arlene. I second.
Any opposed? Okay, so the consent agenda is approved with the following update from the staff assembly. The golf tournament has been moved. They decided May was not a good idea, so it is now taking place Wednesday, September 29th. Also, there is a staff assembly UNC system HR update that will be happening next Friday. I believe that is the 12th. I'll get you guys the information for that. And those are the two updates from staff assembly. And quickly, I wanted to clarify an email I sent out to the body recently. I had a delegate ask me to help with an initiative to get some of our older folks vaccinated who may be resistant or not having trouble getting vaccinated in order to increase equity in that population. Thank you for responding. I have some names. What actually ended up happening was as I was about to send an email, I realized I'm sending an email with personal information. So I am meeting with the gentleman from the NAACP Health and Wellness. He's a co-chair. I'm meeting with him today at 1:15, and then again with Dr. Wall at sometime after 2 o'clock to find out how we can safely protect people's personal identification, but also help with this incredibly important initiative. So please don't email me that information quite yet. I will get more information about how we can participate in that initiative by the end of the day, and I will send you an update. Any questions on that? I just want to make sure people don't continue to send me other people's personal information. Okay, great. So moving on to all business, of which there is none, and then new business, we have a resolution in front of the body. Let me explain, because something came up in our talk about resolutions. There is actually nowhere in our bylaws that says that we have to have 2 readings. However, 25 years ago, I think the feeling was that people were getting resolutions at the very last minute, and they weren't having adequate time to take these resolutions back to their constituency, think about them. So we are going to continue to follow the 2 reading resolution, except with resolutions that are deemed urgent, which is standing with what we've done for the last 25 years. If that becomes a problem, let's bring that up at the executive committee meeting. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Phil, who is going to present the first reading of Resolution 2101.
Yes, thanks, Shana. And Becky kind of got into this a little bit. I've gone ahead and shared a PDF of this resolution text in the chat as a file if you want to open that locally. Are you seeing the screen share?
We are.
Okay. Okay, there we go. I've dropped this in the chat. If you would like to silently read this, feel free to open it on your browser. I'm going to read it just down the text so the folks who might be listening to this but not able to see their screen or who aren't able to open the file will be able to hear it, and we'll have it as part of the transcript. I will stop sharing the screen when I am done reading, and I am happy at that point to also add additions that have been sent to me or to others and have been forwarded on since this PDF was created. So Resolution 2101 regarding combined impacts of the suspension on HR actions and the university's acute budgetary challenges on compensation, equity, and career progression. Whereas it is the stated mission of the employee forum to seek out and address constructively issues facing staff, faculty, and students of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and whereas these concerns include the welfare of staff employees who, since early 2020, continue to exert extraordinary efforts to implement university initiatives during the ongoing COVID-19 global pandemic, and whereas university EHRA non-faculty and SHRA employees remain essential partners in the pursuit of outcomes associated with the university's strategic plan, Carolina Next, Innovations for the Public Good, as endorsed by the UNC-Chapel Hill Board of Trustees on January 30th, 2020. And Section 1, whereas Objective 1.1 under Carolina Next Strategic Initiative Build Our Community Together calls for efforts to, quote, invest in policies, systems, and infrastructure that promote belonging, community, and transparency throughout the university community, end quote. And whereas Objective 8.3 under Carolina Next Strategic Initiative 8, Optimize Operations, calls for efforts to, quote, design, implement, execute, assess, and continuously improve the administrative operations that support the university's mission of teaching, research, and public service, end quote. And scrolling up for folks. Whereas the UNC System Racial Equity Task Force draft recommendations released on November 10th, 2020, regarding, quote, representation and retention at all levels of the university, end quote, includes the potential strategy to, quote, review equitable pay, promotion, and tenure practices, assess strength and growth opportunities, and develop actionable plans for improvement, end quote, at each of the constituent institutions of the UNC system. And whereas the Employee Forum report, Effects of COVID-19 on the Employees of UNC-Chapel Hill and Recommendations for Senior Leaders, released in October 2020, reported that 12% of survey respondents explicitly stated that they were working more or harder than was typical prior to the emergence of the pandemic. And scrolling for folks. Whereas the Effect of COVID-19 report documented evidence-based recommendations for the university, including provide additional compensation and protect vulnerable staff, and whereas existing structures for compensating UNC employees for their exhaustive and frankly exhausting contributions to sustain university operations during the prior year's dual public health and economic crises are insufficient to remedy the situation, and whereas a strain on UNC employees of such magnitude deters progress toward the achievement of objectives from Carolina Next, particularly build our community together and optimize operations, and whereas EHRA employees may receive supplemental pay as overloads and salary supplements in accordance with the university's policy on supplemental pay for EHRA employees, and whereas these supplemental pay procedures are intended to, quote, address temporary increases in responsibility or significant and substantial duties performed under unusual circumstances outside of normal work hours, quote, and whereas SHRA employees are not eligible for similar forms of compensation within the university's authority when the responsibilities or duties increase due to temporary or unusual circumstances, including increased work volume. And whereas authority for pre-approving temporary salary adjustments for SHRA employees resides with the UNC Systems Office, one, when the cumulative amount of all currently active temporary salary adjustments in the current fiscal year exceeds 20% of the most recent June 30th base salary, end quote. And 2, when the temporary adjustment, quote, exceeds 12 months in duration, regardless of the amount of that adjustment, end quote, in close consultation with the North Carolina Office of State Human Resources. Scrolling up. Whereas retroactive SHRA salary increases are not allowed unless mandated by a legislative action, end quote. However, quote, except when correcting, sorry, let me adjust my emphasis. However, except when correcting an administrative error or other exceptional circumstances, out of cycle EHRA salary increases are authorized only on a current and not a retroactive basis. Whereas UNC employees, in order to be compensated for their increased work volume since early 2020, have 2 disparate processes to which they may appeal based on their appointment type. One, to UNC, where an interpretation of other exceptional circumstances could grant relief on a retroactive basis for EHRA employees. And 2, to the Systems Office, North Carolina Office of State Human Resources, and ultimately the North Carolina General Assembly, where legislative mandates are the sole mechanism for temporarily increasing, scrolling up, compensation for SHRA employees who have performed additional work while supporting the university during the pandemic. Whereas no UNC employee should have to acquiesce the workplace protections associated with an SHRA appointment in order to receive the benefit of compensation processes akin to those governing EHRA employees. And whereas expanding compensation tools for SHRA employees is one part of career growth and development. And section 2, whereas objective 3.2 under Carolina Next Strategic Initiative, Enable Career Development, calls to, quote, provide university staff with systematic professional development options, enabling them to grow career opportunities, end quote. And whereas strategic opportunities under objective 3.2 include recruitment and retention, and, quote, professional development opportunities to facilitate career advancement for staff, end quote. And whereas the current career banding system for SHRA employees was designed as a compensation and classification system and not a system to specifically nurture career advancement within the university. And whereas the current career banding compensation system for SHRA employees lacks additional temporary compensation mechanisms available for EHRA non-faculty employees, as detailed above. And scrolling up. Whereas the current career banding compensation system for SHRA employees creates perverse and inequitable compensation outcomes for internal job candidates seeking new positions at the university compared to those offered to selected candidates coming from outside the university. And whereas the objectives for Carolina Next under Strategic Initiative 3, Enable Career Development, are disjoint from issues of compensation and classification, career advancement within the university, and succession planning within campus units, which diminishes the potential this strategic initiative has to advance necessary and equitable structural changes, which benefit both the university and the committed high-performing employees who work here. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Employee Forum urges the Chancellor and his cabinet to advocate for the UNC Systems Office, and in turn, the North Carolina Office of State Human Resources and the North Carolina General Assembly to expand the financial tools available to UNC and or the UNC system to retroactively compensate SHRA employees on a temporary basis for additional work duties undertaken during the COVID-19 pandemic, including 1, expanding the definition of additional duties to include increases in the volume of work performed, and 2, offering mechanisms for supplemental and overload salary adjustments on par with those available to EHRA employees. Secondly, undertake a campus review of, quote, other exceptional circumstances, unquote, language regarding EHRA non-faculty salary adjustments in order to expand the applicability of the salary adjustment policy to include increases in the volume of work performed. Point 3, advocate for the UNC System Office to resume their exploration of alternative compensation systems, including those used by state agencies to address longstanding compensation and career development issues, which we recognize may be a 3 to 5 year process. Point 4, empower team captains and strategic objective leads for the Enable Career Development Strategic Initiative of Carolina Next to incorporate additional objectives regarding career progression within the university, critical reviews of current and alternative employee compensation systems, insofar as those systems constrain the hiring and retention of UNC employees. and then signed on behalf of Shayna. Thank you for sitting through a very long reading. I'm going to unshare now.
Great. So I want to open it up to the body for comments or concerns, and I will just start with, I think in the very end of the resolution to add, we are asking for the 20% cap issue to be resolved.
Yes, and that is something that in the whirlwind of leading up to getting a document for us to look at, I think was something we didn't explicitly cite in there. I will say some other comments that I've received. One was to include a clause, whereas the HR pause and the Carolina Next call to optimize operations have precluded departments from backfilling or filling positions, creating a compounding workload for remaining SHR employees with no mechanism for appropriate compensation, would be another clause sort of in there near the end of whereases. I'm happy to sort of include this in a second reading comment version of this. Another question that that I've gotten from a couple of folks over email, or as you watched me edit this resolution in real time this morning in Google Docs, was, is this the right time to be asking for these various things from the university in terms of the evidence that we're citing or the need that we're expressing, given that the budgetary situation is kind of in flux? That was a question that came up. I don't know that we have an answer, but I raise it as something that other folks might have also been thinking about.
Great. And to answer Sarah's question, absolutely. The first reading is so that you can then share this information with your constituents.
Yeah, and this I would suggest sharing the PDF only because that's a snapshot of the text. I think the version that exists in Google Docs, which has some marginal commentary, and thank you folks who provided suggestions about the text or small edits, that was very helpful this morning. I have a direct message on correcting a statement from the quotes. Okay. So I have some small content corrections that are suggested that I'm going to copy down.
So do you want to tell the body when you are meeting next as a personnel issues committee?
Yes, I would love to if I can find my window with my calendar. And Steph, if you are on and know when this happens, that would be awesome too. Oh, we're actually meeting tomorrow at noon to 1 on the 4th. One thing that we have not talked about as a committee, or Steph and I have not discussed, is the possibility of holding sort of like an open office hours feedback time a couple of times throughout the next couple of weeks. If you have particular examples of experiences that your employees or things that you've heard in your unit that would inform some of the way these issues are framed or embellish what's already there, that would be, we are happy to provide those times and make those times public. Just time to drop into Zoom if you have additional questions. Laura's question, can you give us a deadline of when you would like feedback to be submitted to you? Well, before the next general body meeting would be great, because we'll have to make those revisions. I would say probably a week before the next time we meet next month. If this has lit a fire under anybody in terms of these compensation issues and you want to contribute to the refining of this document, please feel free. You are welcome to join the process. It has been about a month of listening and meetings and lots of support from both our HR partners and other employees on campus to even get this far and to figure out who does what, whether it's the system office, the state, Office of State Human Resources, or the legislature. Rosemary's comment, I think it would be helpful to include what parts of salary compensation adjustment policies. Sure. Okay, I've had a couple of folks express interest in direct messages. We will reach out to you. I realize we're at time, so I don't want to usurp any more of your precious work day, but anything that is a particularly burning or heated question or comment that you must share with us together before we sort of scamper away to make small and sometimes not so small changes.
So if you're feeling shy, please reach out to Phil, Stephanie, or me, or Matt, if you want some of your thoughts included and you just don't want to share them here, we are happy to take feedback anonymously as well.
And this is something that we'll be discussing at the Personnel Issues Committee. It has been, in order to get this done quickly, it has been a relatively small group of folks, but this is the best reflection of what we think we've learned up to this point. So the committee itself will kind of have more of an active role in this process moving forward too.
Any other thoughts on the resolution? Okay, so is there a motion to accept the first reading with the caveat that there will be a further work done in the next month?
I move.
Is there a second?
Hey, this is Teresa Silsby, I second.
Any opposed? Great. Approval of first reading has been moved by the body. And we are 3 minutes over, which is not bad for such a huge agenda. So with that said, thank you everyone for your amazing work as always. Is there a motion to adjourn?
This is Arlene. I move to adjourn.
Any opposed?
Laura, a second.
Okay, any opposed on adjourning? No. Thank you, everybody.
Good day, everybody.
Have a great week.
Good work, Bill. Have a good
Thanks,
weekend.
folks. Keep it up. Hang in there.
Thank you all.